The big scam. Rule of law lawfare, to crush the people's choice. The U.S. State Department and CIA have a three-pronged attack to halt, block, or jail Europe's populist nationalist leaders, fund NGOs to smear them, weaponize legal systems to tie them up, and flex diplomatic muscle to choke them out. This isn't some tinfoil hat theory. It's their own words, their own dollars, their own moves. The goal? Keep Europe locked into the globalist agenda, open borders, free trade, supranational control, and squash anyone who dares put their own country first. Let's break it down, country by country, with a mountain of receipts. 1. Funding NGOs, the smear machine. The blob's got a cash pipeline running through the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, a CIA cutout, no question. Alan Weinstein, NED's co-founder, admitted in a 1991 Washington Post interview, "A lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. They're not even hiding it. The NED pumps millions into NGOs to smear populist leaders as authoritarian or anti-democratic, even when they're racking up landslide wins." Hungary, targeting Viktor Orban. Orban's been kicking globalist ass since 2010, winning elections in 2010, 2014, 2018, and 2022, 53% in the last one, per Hungary's own election data. Yet the US funds NGOs to paint him as a dictator. The NED's 2021 grants list shows $1.7 million funneled to Hungarian groups like the Hungarian Helsinki Committee and Transparency International Hungary, both obsessed with rule of law, attacks on Orban. USAID's 2020 budget dumped another $2.3 million into civil society projects there, for their own financials. And don't miss this. The Open Society Foundations, Soros's baby, bragged in their 2018 annual report about spending $3.2 million in Hungary to counter IL liberalism. That's Soros spawning the first wave, then NED and USAID piling on. Receipts. NED's 2021 grant database, public on their site, lists specific payouts to anti-Orban outfits. Their Journal of Democracy, April 2020, ran a piece, Hungary's Democracy Deficit, calling Orban a threat to liberal values. Soros's own 2015 op-ed in Project Syndicate admitted he's been funding NGOs in Hungary since the 80s. USAID's 2021 Democracy and Governance report brags about strengthening civil society to check Orban's power. More receipts. The NED's 2019 strategy document names Hungary as a priority country for intervention. Freedom House, another NED-funded outfit, dropped Hungary's democracy score in their 2022 Nations in Transit report, citing judicial interference, all while Orban's winning elections. Even more receipts. The U.S. Embassy in Budapest's 2020 press release announced $700,000 in grants for independent media to counter government narratives. The Hungarian government's own 2021 report tracked 87 NGOs with U.S. funding, all pushing anti-Orban lines. Poland, smearing law and justice. Poland's Law and Justice Party PiS took 44% in the 2019 election, for Poland's National Electoral Commission, but the U.S. can't stand them. The NED's 2022 grants list shows $1.9 million to Polish NGOs like the Stefan Batory Foundation, Soros founded, by the way, and the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights, both hammering PiS for judicial overreach. USAID chipped in $1.5 million in 2021 for democracy promotion, per their budget docs. Soros's Open Society Foundations dropped $2.8 million in Poland in 2020 alone, per their annual report, targeting illiberal trends. Receipts. NED's Journal of Democracy, July 2021, ran an article, Poland's Democratic Erosion, urging civil society to resist PiS. The NED's 2020 Global strategy. Report flags Poland as a backsliding democracy. Soros's 2016 speech at the European Parliament boasted about funding pro-democracy groups in Poland since 89. More receipts. USAID's 2022 Civil Society Strengthening Plan names Poland as a key target, with $900,000 for independent media. The Batory Foundation's 2021 report admits to receiving NED grants to monitor judicial independence. Even more receipts. The U.S. State Department's 2021 Human Rights Report slams PIEs for undermining rule of law, echoing NED-funded NGO talking points word for word. Italy, undermining Salvini. Matteo Salvini's Lega Party surged to 34% in the 2019 EU elections, for Italy's Ministry of Interior, but the blob hit back. The NED's 2020 grants list shows $800,000 to Italian NGOs like the Italian Federation for Human Rights, pushing narratives about Salvini's anti-migrant extremism. Soros's Open Society Foundations spent $1.1 million in Italy in 2019 for their financials backing migration advocacy groups. Receipts. NED's Journal of Democracy, October 2019, ran Italy's Populist Temptation, calling Salvini a threat to EU values. The Open Society's 2020 Migration Initiative report details funding for Italian NGOs to counter populist policies. More receipts. USAID's 2021 Mediterranean programs budget includes $600,000 for civil society in Italy. The U.S. Embassy in Rome's 2019 statement pledged $500,000 for human rights groups opposing Salvini. Even more receipts. The NED's 2018 Europe Strategy memo lists Italy as a priority for democracy support against populists. 2. Weaponizing legal systems. Lawfare on steroids. When smears don't stick, the U.S. pushes legal attacks, investigations, lawsuits, arrests, to bankrupt or jail these leaders. It's rule of law as a battering ram. Poland, locking up PIEs. The NED's Journal of Democracy, January 2020, straight-up call for transitional justice against PIEs, code for mass arrests of political opponents. Norm Eisen, a blob operative tied to the NED's Transatlantic Democracy Working Group, bragged in a 2021 Atlantic Council panel about legal strategies to hold PIEs accountable. Poland's own Justice Ministry faced U.S.-backed pressure to probe PIEs leaders, with NED-funded NGOs filing cases. Receipts. NED's 2022 Poland program report lists $400,000 for judicial monitoring groups. Eisen's 2020 book, A Case for the American People, hints at using lawfare globally. The Helsinki Foundation's 2021 filing against PIEs leaders cites rule of law violations. More receipts. The U.S. State Department's 2022 Democracy Summit remarks pushed Poland to restore judicial independence. The NED's 2019 Rule of Law grant funded Polish lawyers to sue PIEs officials. Even more receipts. The EU's 2021 Rule of Law report, parroting U.S. lines, demanded Poland investigate PIEs, right after a $1.2 million NED grant drop. Italy, tying up Salvini. Salvini faced prosecution in 2019 for blocking migrant boats, charged with kidnapping by Italian ports, per case filings. The timing, right after his EU election win. NED-funded NGOs like the Italian Federation for Human Rights pushed the narrative, while Soros's Open Society lobbied for migrant rights lawsuits for their 2020 report. Receipts. The NED's 2021 Italy grants list includes $300,000 for human rights advocacy tied to Salvini's case. The Open Society's 2019 Legal Empowerment Fund bankrolled Italian lawyers suing him. More receipts. The U.S. Embassy in Rome's 2020 Human Rights Statement cheered the case. The Ned's Journal of Democracy, July 2020, praised the prosecution as a defense of EU norms. Even more receipts. Salvini's own 2021 court docs show NGO testimony, traceable to Ned grants, drove the charges. Hungary. Judicial smackdown on Orban. The U.S. accuses Orban of undermining judicial independence, pushing the EU to investigate his government. Ned-funded groups like the Hungarian Helsinki Committee filed complaints for their 2021 annual report, claiming Orban's stacking courts ironic, given his voter mandate. Receipts. Ned's 2020 Hungary program gave $500,000 to judicial reform outfits. The U.S. State Department's 2021 country report parrots the same line. More receipts. The EU's 2022 rule of law mechanism cites Ned-funded NGO data to target Hungary. USAID's 2021 Justice Sector grant-funded Hungarian legal training, $800,000 worth. Even more receipts. The Ned's 2019 Europe Blueprint calls for legal pressure on Orban's Fidesz party. 3. Diplomatic muscle, sanctions and isolation. When all else fails, the U.S. flexes its diplomatic clout, sanctions, EU pressure, NATO threats, to isolate these leaders. Hungary. EU sanctions push. The EU froze €7.5 billion in funds to Hungary in 2023, for the European Commission, citing rule of law violations. The U.S. drove it. Benz tracked State Department cables via FOIA showing U.S. diplomats lobbying EU brass to punish Orban. The Ned's 2021 Europe strategy explicitly calls for multilateral pressure on Hungary. Receipts. USAID's 2022 Hungary plan brags about coordinating with EU partners. The U.S. State Department's 2021 democracy strategy names Hungary as a sanctions target. More receipts. The Ned's 2020 Transatlantic Partnership memo pushes EU action. The U.S. Embassy in Brussels' 2022 statement cheered the freeze. Even more receipts. Orban's own 2023 speech cited U.S. Ambassador David Pressman's public threats. Pressman's a blob bet tied to Ned circles. Poland. NATO leverage. The U.S. uses the Transatlantic Democracy Working Group, a Ned State Department front, to meddle in Poland. Their 2021 report demanded PIE's reform or face NATO backlash. State Department cables from 2022 for Benz's FOIA haul show U.S. officials pressuring Polish diplomats. Receipts. Ned's 2022 Poland grants list $600,000 for NATO alignment projects. The State Department's 2021 Summit for Democracy singled out Poland. More receipts. The Working Group's 2020 Action Plan targets PIE's. USAID's 2021 Security Cooperation budget includes $700,000 for Polish governance. Even more receipts. Biden's 2022 NATO summit speech hinted at consequences for Poland's backsliding. Italy. Soft power squeeze. The U.S. leaned on Italy post-Salvini, with Ned-funded groups pushing EU trade pressure. The State Department's 2020 Italy report warned of populist risks to EU unity. Receipts. Ned's 2021 Italy strategy calls for EU leverage. USAID's 2020 Trade and Governance Fund gave $400,000 to Italian NGOs. More receipts. The U.S. Embassy in Rome's 2019 Economic Partnership statement pushed anti-populist lines. Even more receipts. The Ned's 2018 Mediterranean Focus memo flags Italy as a pressure point. The Blueprint Full Spectrum Takeover. This ain't random, it's a system. Romania post-1989 was the lab. Soros funded the first Go Open Society Institute, spawning 1,000 plus more, per Benz's tally from Net Archives. USAID then dropped $15 million from 1992,000, for their own historical data, funding the American Bar Association to rewrite Romania's constitution and train its judges. The NED's 1995 Romania report brags about judicial restructuring. Now, they're scaling it across Europe, Hungary, Poland, Italy, you name it. Receipts. Soros's 1993 book, Underwriting Democracy, admits to funding Romania's NGO boom. USAID's 1998 Rule of Law report details the ABA's $5 million judicial grant. More receipts. The NED's 1997 Eastern Europe Strategy boasts about Romania as a model. The ABA's 2000 Sealy Program report confirms U.S. control over Romanian ports. Even more receipts. Romania's 1991 Constitution draft, leaked in 2010, shows ABA edits for Benz's dig into declassified files. Why? Power, not principle. Populist nationalists like Orban, Salvini, and Pais threaten the blobs, liberal international order, open borders, NATO wars, EU supremacy. The NED's 2019 Global Threats report calls them destabilizing forces. The State Department's 2021 Foreign Policy Priorities memo says they undermine U.S. interests. So, when Europe's voters pick them, the U.S. doesn't cheer democracy, it swings the lawfare hammer. Receipts. NED President Carl Gershman's 2018 speech named populists as priority targets. The State Department's 2020 Europe policy brief flags them as risks to transatlantic unity. More receipts. The NED's 2021 Democracy Defense Plan vows to counter them with legal tools. USAID's 2022 Global Strategy echoes it. Even more receipts. Biden's 2021 National Security Strategy calls populism a threat to liberal order. The bottom line. Rule of law lawfare is the deep state's dirtiest trick. The State Department and CIA use it to crush Europe's populist nationalist champs, not because they're tyrants, but because they're popular and won't kiss the globalist ring. The receipts are stacked. NED's own journals, USAID's budgets, Soros's boasts, State Department cables, EU sanctions docs, all proving this is a power grab, not a principle. Democracy's the real casualty here, and if this ain't election interference on steroids, I don't know what is. One post.